Well, Kurt Doolittle himself.
We need louder bread. There we go.
Oh my. You have hot coffee? We're
I
back in
do.
position, ready to do some
Looking
more.
debonair again today.
Doing our best. Life is good. I got these episodes. This is episode 2059 by my reckoning. So there appears to be some accounting problem in my book here. I'm going to have to look at this, but I'm not going to do it right now. But you will hit the like, subscribe, and the other button below, the reminder button. And then leave us some wonderful comments, which I have yet to, I've been out to lunch. I've been at the beach. And now I'm back in position and ready to start studying and making progress again, Kurt.
Did you wear SPF 9 million or something? Because you're just as white as you were when you left.
I know. That's the goal. It's like to be not more red than necessary, because it's like you get hurt bad. Guy like me can't take the beach too well. It's a fascinating thing. It's like, was it one of my kids got wiped out doing body surfing, and he got wiped out, and I think the sand scraped away the sunscreen, so he got sunburn on his back from it. It's the way it goes. That's life in the fast lane.
We had a pool when I was a kid, and I got sunburned so bad that I had crusted blisters all over my back and shoulders. And he said, "You're never allowed to get sunburned again." My doctor said, "Never again."
Wow.
So yeah.
That was good. So you
Yeah,
got
it was really it was funny because at that point, you used to be able to go to places and buy block ice and ice cubes.
right.
And my dad happened to own one of those places that makes ice, right? It's just it was the back of the garden center. I don't know why. I mean, I do know why it was there, but it just came with the place. It's like, gas stations make money selling milk, right? I mean, well, that was another thing, right? The ice.
That's right.
But God, when I had that sunburn hanging out in the ice house was awesome.
No doubt. No doubt. Like, wow. What a world.
Anyway, so any news from your trip? Anything interesting?
Was it? It was no. It was what? There was some interesting tidings, but it's like social familial, right?
Oh, okay.
It's like the irritation of the feminine thinking people was much diminished, which is quite interesting. I did not expect them to be so they were much more reserved than normally, and nowhere near as irritated by my nephew and my political talk, which was kind of interesting. It's like kind of like the behavior was the opposite of what I would have expected.
Interesting.
So it's a data point as like what is actually occurring here, which is that the tide is doing something weird, because they're not behaving in as extreme of a manner as they used to, like, in years past.
Yeah, I was talking to a guy. Brandon had a party yesterday, so I went to Brandon's party.
Cool.
And it was a candidate guy, a candidate for office there. And he's saying that the window is moving over people who previously would have been oblivious.
Which is what?
They can't be oblivious anymore.
Well, I mean, it's like this. It's like the real thing that I thought was funny is it's like it becomes increasingly likely to me that what is occurring is a counterintelligence operation, because noting the Mr. Biden's latest speech and the backdrop and the rhetoric of it is just an odd extreme. Like Saturday Night Live can't even make this stuff up anymore. They've outstripped the ability of the ridiculous. They've gone beyond.
Well, I mean, he's a sock puppet.
Yep.
For network and administration that's full of people who are in the cult, right? The woke cult. So they think that they are righteous and they can win. And I'm like, well, the problem with credentialists is they live in a bubble. Who was saying that? Who was saying? I was trying to think of who it was. Somebody was giving on a talk show, and she said, "Well, my mother predicted all this because she gets outside of the city. But if people don't get outside of the city, they don't see the anger and with everybody. Because when you're in a city, even then, you don't realize that you're in a bubble within a city because you associate with a concentration of people like you instead of associate with a distribution of people, right? Because those cities concentrate. That's one of the reasons we like them, right? It's easier to find more people like us to confirm our priors. You combine that with living in a city that where the feedback loop doesn't exist, right? And you combine that with the fact that you feel powerless, and most people are increasingly unable to obtain responsibility. Then there's a generate demand for authority, and so you can see how they think they can do this. The problem is that they're we've talked about this extensively. Is they're insulated from the real world, and by the cacophony of their echo chamber. Yet they call the echo chamber. We're repeating the same thing, but we're actually in the real world. We're see a distribution of people. And I was trying to think of how to describe this: the credentialist versus the demonstrativist, right? Is that when you're a credentialist, you consistently work with people who are it's like the problem of the academy. You're in a narrower and narrower range with increasing false confidence. Whereas if you have to manage people across all the classes, you're stuck with the reality of how to manage people by incentives.
Yes.
And so, and that people do have different incentives and different wants and whatever's. And so it's just one of those things where the value of cities as a market is true. The problem of city thinking is also true.
Well, since the city I went to was none other than the imperial center itself. So it was like, of insular cities, I believe the District of Columbia and its surrounding climates are about as bad as it gets in terms of insulation. And it's like, I would specify, however, with minor only editing that I would do on that statement you just made is that it's not anger, it's moral outrage.
Moral outrage, correct.
That way it's not an emotional function, it's a limit of cooperative potential, right? And it registers as anger. What's that?
It's moral outrage, but it's moral outrage based on a pinhole view of the credentialist pinhole view of the world, and the demonstrated competency of people who actually operate in the world across the spectrum. So that we have you either get a broad system view or you get a pencil.
That's it.
Which is sort of like the pencil view is the opposite of the empathic view. Like the empathic view is you're extending your interpretation of what people feel beyond your range of competency. But the pinhole view of the world, or the pencil view of the credentialist view of the world, is that you understand this broader world from within the context you're applying, when reality is that what we found, which is overwhelming, I was trying to explain this to some guys yesterday, is that, in economics, we're really aware of it. What we found about credentialists is that in economics, we're really aware of it. And I bring this up all the time because mastery of one discipline within economics makes you extremely good at this one thing, but worse at all other things in economics. And so what you have is that you can't ask 100 economists. You have to ask the 4 economists who actually know that one thing.
Otherwise, you're not going to get any.
You're going to actually get a worse answer than the average guy on the street. Why? Because the average guy in the street is exposed to the range of human behavior, not just assumption of it or a model of it. Well, so the problem with credentialists is the same thing, is that they've gone through this education process, they've been educated, but they haven't been experienced. And so it's sort of like, it's like going from, I would say, go from problems to books, don't go from books to problems. If you go from books to problems, you'll think you know something. But the real answer is if you've identified a problem and you go to books to find it, that's probably useful. But if you go out and you find a book and you find something interesting and then go try to solve a problem with it, you're probably wrong, because you're working the information system backwards from precise imprecision to an individual case. What you want to do is take an individual case and find the general rules that have been identified that somewhat apply, and it's usually an intersection of 10 different things. So I don't know. I mean, it's just, I keep talking to people that think that they're smart, and I'm like, you're actually kind of stupid.
I want to specify that a little bit. Like, this is ambiguous to me. They think that they're smart. It's actually, they falsely believe themselves to be smart.
Yeah.
Erroneous.
Well, it's like the cunning versus moral thing. They used to argue that going to college increasingly makes one cunning, but decreasingly makes one moral. Well, but what does our system reward? It rewards cunning, right? It's like, how do I eke a marginal advantage out of this circumstance versus what produces the common good? So it's like, how do you, it's just, so the same reason the middle class is the only moral class. It's because they're actually the ones that try to solve problems between people rather than fulfill ideologies or compensate for failures.
Problems between people. That's interesting. So it's like, yeah, it's an interpersonal solution set is generated, which requires cooperation, as opposed to a it's like false systematization.
It's what?
False systematization.
Yes.
So you generate you could use your pencil view to create a system that, by excluding everybody that doesn't happen to agree. And you have to get rid of them because it's a universal system that you're attempting to impose. So it's like you have to murder people.
Mm-hmm.
That's my impression, but I'm
that's
just another morally outraged person.
What happens with conservatives? You spend a lot of time trying to build rule of law. What happens with liberals? They kill them. They kill 100 million people in order to get to their ideology. And what I can't figure out is why it's so obvious that minor domestications that deprive you of opportunities for consumption, unearned consumption, is somehow worse than the false promise that we're all going to have equal wants and needs and competencies and live in. I mean, I just don't. How can you?
Wait. You're attempting to use a rational overlay on that which is not.
Yeah, exactly.
It can't be done. It's like, it's foolishness. So don't do it. Kurt, stop.
I must have said that like 20 times yesterday. I'm like, you think they're thinking, but they're not.
And there's some rational processing going on. It's like, it's not. So it's like,
I read a great study on autistic brain function the other day, which is interesting. Like, you can either study autists or normal people, or you can study crazy fuckers. And I'm like, I don't want to study crazy fuckers, right? I mean, there's crazy fuckers, there's dysfunctionals, there's normal people, and there's autists. And I mean, we get all the shit, but I mean, the truth is, there's so many of us that have high IQ compared to the there's just 8 times as many of us, right, compared to the norms. And so you look at these problems and you're like, well, you study this autists, and it turns out that even autists are appealing to intuition. It's just, what's the intuition? In other words, the brain is providing an intuitionistic solution, but what's the intuition?
Yes.
Well, the intuition is just different, right? But so I'm like I keep saying this to everybody. Everything is, your brain is going to put forward a market competition for solutions, all of which are produced by auto association, intuition.
It's the only way it can be done.
It's the only way it can be done. There's no, you can't introspect back on there. You can only permute and just try, right? And so the difference in our intuitions is basically one of how we emotionally, our emotional valiance, attribution of weight to different things. And so it's just that, we're trying to discuss why Brandon, it's very interesting to talk to Brandon, because Brandon's similar. He's just not very verbose, right? I mean, he's just he doesn't say a lot of words, so you
Terse.
don't, what?
He's
He's
terse.
terse. And so you can't really, you have to put together 10 of things he says over a month to see what he's really
What's the
thinking.
process
Right?
going on
'Cause
here, right?
he doesn't tell, like I try really, I mean, I overdo the storytelling in order to communicate what's going on, right? And so we're talking, it's like, well, why? But all his friends said the same thing. He just sees the clarity. Well, I mean, well, that's all it means, is that you're systematizing more instead of empathizing, but you're still intuiting, right? And so it just depends on how biased is your intuition.
Right, because it's like what your intuition is attempting to provide. It's not attempting to do anything. It is a circuit set that allows you to come up with a solution to a problem that you have detected.
Yes, it's
in the
just looking
environment.
for a path.
So,
Looking for a path.
the most efficient way to get there as
Yeah.
possible.
Yep.
And all of them are trying to match to perceived reality. And some of them are better at it than others, right?
Right. Or differently is that some people are wired to just see the world as it is, and some people are wired to project what their wants on the world. And it's that
well, that's we call those people children. You just made me be bad.
no,
It's a baby. It's just a baby.
I was talking. I have a friend who's a psychologist, right?
Okay.
And I'm talking to her, and we're going back and forth and saying, well, the problem is that, because we were talking, so I went and I read like 10 books on therapy, not psychology. I've already read the top 100 books. I don't have to read them. But when you talk about therapy, and she's like she's like uses lots of therapy words, and I'm like, I have to translate everything you say, and but I went and read, these six, I guess it was 6 books, six books on, and it turns out that what they're doing is actually really simple and sort of works, but all therapy words are so feminine, it's offensive, right? And I said, the problem is that it's offensive to a male, and so it's actually causes men to have a disgust response. So I was trying to get this across to her, and it was working. And so I said, finally, though, I said, the problem is that what you're saying, almost all of you say, is the female method of submit to your emotions. And I said, well, that's just being irresponsible. That's being a child. That's not being an adult. And I'm like, the reason guys, you can't get so many men into therapy who need it, is because you don't understand that they understand someone's fucking got to be responsible. And that being responsible is independent upon how you feel. You may not feel good about it, but the responsibility is a fact. And so I'm like, I'm going over this, and I'm like, so basically this psychology has worked to make people irresponsible as a virtue. In other words, it's actually telling you don't learn how to the Stoic method of training your emotions. Instead, look at how to live your life to correspond to your emotions. And I'm like, that's fucking sick.
Yeah,
I
it
said,
just
what you're
doesn't make
talking about is infantilization.
yes.
And I'm like, well, that psychology alone explains the vast problem that the left is embarking on, which is the feminine horror at the act of self-regulation, which is what keeps them in.
I like the choice of the words horror. That was just awful.
Because that's what it is. They're horrified by the need to observe and analyze their emotions rather than the desire to be able to luxuriously experience the full complement of their emotions and project that out on the world.
Well, that's just kind of interesting to me because it's like the interesting function of it is that there's this projection function, which is project what you're actually doing to the world. Which is the interesting function is that the left appears to be looking at the people who don't agree with them politically and project hatred upon them. And all these vile emotional attributions, which don't appear to be real at all to me. And it's fascinating. It's like that it's like so unself-aware. It's anti-self-awareness. Because if it's not me, it can't be me, it must be you, is the opposite of self-awareness.
Well, but that's the whole point of their cognition, right? Is, I mean, realistically, remember, we're doing me all the time. I want.
Right.
We're forgetting that they're just anybody with a feminine intuition is basically a bird in the nest doing this, saying,
Right.
feed. That's all that's happening. The problem is you can't let the fucking little birds in the nest saying, feed me, who think that they're have a grasp of the world, be in charge of the people who are the adults. And it's really scary that, basically a third of us are adults. And the people on the left think they're adults when they're actually children.
They're simply mistaken. It's understandable. It's like, yeah, you've been issued great credentials and
Yeah,
and
but even if we went through that, and we said, okay, well, let's take a look at the credentials that have been issued and which one are systematizing and which one are not, which one the correspondence is, you wouldn't have any, it would be the same ratio as in the STEM courses. The STEM courses are trying actively to get more dysfunctional people in them in order to claim they're not biased. So, I mean, you'd end up with the same thing, which is, it's the Pareto distribution. And there wouldn't be any leftists in the distribution. What you get the Gates effect from people who are successful, is because they fight their way to wealth, and then what they want to do is fight their way to virtue. They want to climb this Maslowian hierarchy of rewards. And so now you get those people that are like, well, we should be magnanimous and whatever. I'm like, you got billions of dollars, be fucking magnanimous, whatever. But don't tell the middle class guy who's still back where you were fighting all your way up the tree.
Right.
Don't be magnanimous with his money, be magnanimous with your own.
Don't twist his arm, it's rude. He's needing it.
Well, I mean, if you think about this, we used to give money to the church, right? Right? You could buy the pew in the church, right? So you could sit up front. So this would be status, right? I mean, there were Romans who could pay for the entire Roman military any year out of their pockets, right? I mean, just think about it. I mean, is there anybody rich enough to pay for the American military out of their pocket? Of course not. I mean, it's not even imaginable. So you say, well, it used to be that you would get status for public contribution, but they actually obscure who pays taxes. Whereas if you show who pays taxes, we'd be able to thank these people instead of the fucking politicians.
That's probably the cause. That
It's
we want to
exactly the
vilify the
reason.
people who actually pay.
Who actually pay the taxes. And then we wouldn't have this negative opinion about rich people, because the truth is that, well, an awful lot of people go through the upper 1%, like when they sell a house or something like that, right?
Right.
So there's it's very hard to stay in there for 5 years. It's harder for 10 years. It's harder for life. It's harder for
Sure.
generations. So my view is why don't we just publish who pays all the fucking taxes? Right? Because if you did that, what would happen is you realize almost none of us paying taxes.
That's right.
And if you look at the waste in government, you realize that the rich people pay for the stuff that's useful, and the rest of it's just extraction from the rest of us. I was trying to explain to guys the other day, well, what if you didn't have to pay all this interest? And what if working guys didn't have to pay? Guys who work with their hands, right? Because their bodies break down by their.
Oh, it's tough, man. It's like,
why do we charge these guys? We need to not charge. We might say, instead of taxes, we're going to put this in your forced retirement for you, because your body is going to break down by 45.
Yeah, despite the fact that you're 25 and can't believe that right now.
You can't believe that right now. It's going to stop working.
Which is like a depreciating asset, right?
Well, that's the thing, is that, why are we taxing those people rather than saving it for them, right? And so putting it under their basic control, because otherwise, if we don't do that, we have to go. We're creating a huge. We're taking money from them and just redistributing all over the place without any sense of accountability or justice. Whereas if a guy's money is being put in his retirement, so that when his body breaks down between 40 and 50, that he can move on to like basically he can move into a job that most of us would do at 65 when he's 45. And he has income from that. Yeah. And then he wouldn't feel unjust. Right? He wouldn't feel like he was being treated unjustly.
That's right.
Whereas, like, when you pay millions of dollars in taxes, and it just, for me, that was really hard. That's really hard. Yeah.
Got nothing to say. Just
when you pay millions of dollars in taxes, there's a little bit of it like, I couldn't do this without this infrastructure. Right? I couldn't do this without this legal system, this international trade. I wouldn't be able to. I could never make this happen. Right. That's not true of the fucking guy who's fixing your HVAC.
That's right.
Right? He's going to be there anyway. So it's like I can't really argue with taxing the profits on X number of hundreds of millions. It just doesn't. It's hard to argue with it, because you couldn't produce that any other way.
No.
Another thing is that I don't want to say this the wrong way, but it's true that once you having enough money is a little more money than people think, right? Or depending on who you are, it's more money than people think, right?
Oh, it's a lot, and it's.
Right? But once you have enough money, it stops being your basic objection to taxes isn't the dollars; it's what it's used for, right? You don't object to it's like, I just don't use it for stuff that is bad.
Just stop being bad, please.
Yes. So anyway,
honestly, so we're watching its devolution of power from the center is what's happening. That's the order of the long-term trend, in my opinion, is how it's going.
I hear this from everybody, and I was like, I don't fucking know. This is up to you guys, right? I just look at the system of it, right? And I'm like, this can't fucking work.
Well, it's like, the question is it's graceful failure, right? And it's like, how do you gracefully fail it? It's like, you gracefully fail it by devolving the power back to the states. Yeah. And then politically it's manageable. Whereas it's not manageable at the national level, because it's like, we're never going to agree. It's not going to happen, despite the leftist fevered dreams.
Mm-hmm.
It's never going to happen that way. And it's like, so they have to be snubbed harshly, because they're the ones that are insisting that we continue to participate with them and not leaving us alone in our desire to be left alone, and not cooperate with them in their nonsense. And they must be snubbed, because that's the only way we can get out of this peacefully.
Well, I agree, but I mean, Biden just said, he said he has the clear and present danger, means he has the authority of them to use the military to kill people who disagree with him.
All right, go for it. See how that works out for you, as well as it did in Vietnam and Afghanistan and ... That doesn't work. And it certainly won't work here.
My view is you have to give the good people in government, which is basically the military, a way out.
Okay.
You give them the way out. You don't want us, you've got to find a solution for the good guys by demonizing the bad guys. There's enough guys in the military that's possible. About woking the military, I mean,
honestly,
and they can't even get people to sign up. What was that? It was
let's say no more. It's just the end of the line. That empire is over. It's like nobody signs up to serve it.
It's just 70% of the guys can't get in because they're too unfit. And then another big chunk for some other reason, even if they're fit. No, because they're obese. And then another chunk of them can't do 1 minute's worth of exercise. I mean, they're so, and he says, well, that's because in the 90s we stopped phys ed, of course. Right. So, it's just obvious. And then we changed our diet to supersize everything. And, if you combine those two, you're fucked. You combine removal of adversarial competition in the classroom in order to accommodate women. You dumb down the testing by switching it from mathematics to verbal to accommodate girls. You you emphasize submission as your political and social order in the classroom instead of competition and excellence. And then you remove physical training in sports, right? I mean, what are they going to do to gut competitive? I mean, they're trying to make, I don't know what it is. They try to make nuns. I mean,
I think they're effectively making nuns, except the modern nun is cat ladies.
I was having fun last night teasing this girl. She's a librarian. She's about 40. She's got 3 cats. And so she's playing along, right? This is a party, right?
Right.
So we're all saying nonsense. So I'm like, I figure I can because she's able to, likes to talk, right? So let's talk about, you just brought up this guy who was a failed relationship. Why don't you tell us? So tell me about this guy. Right. And I said, well, who was before him? And who was before him? It was a fucking chain of fucking losers, right? And what's the real problem? He's nice.
He's nice?
No, she's nice.
Oh.
She's a nice person. An optimistic, see the good in people, nice person.
She's a helper.
She's a puppy.
Oh, Mom.
She's actually adorable. I mean, as a person, but you just got a sign on your head that says, I'm a loser guy. I'm going to take advantage of you.
It's got nothing to say. It's like this. It's like, it says victim on the forehead.
Yeah. And it's like, of course, nothing wrong with her.
Oh no, but it's like this. She needs to be protected.
Exactly.
It's just awful because it's like this. It's like I
just want to put out that I was trying to get to its projection. Sorry, go back. Yes.
What projection?
That's what she's doing. She's projecting her emotions on other people.
She's trying to project her niceness on the other people that are.
It doesn't exist. Yeah.
That's an imaginary function. So it's like there's a among the left, the wokies, is this construct called what is it called? Minor attracted person. Okay, right? Minor attracted person means, really translated to operational language, means victim attracted person. Someone who is unable to formulate informed consent is a victim. It's not a minor, it's a victim, and you are a victimizer. We're not all. I won't say the magic word that will cause this to be deplatformed more than it already is, right?
Yeah.
But it rhymes with boomer.
Yeah.
Life is good. What's interesting, so it's like
Well,
this certain clarity.
Oh, sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
There's a certain clarity that comes from having endured this work with you, Kurt. There's this great clarity, and it strips away all these cherished illusions, and it's annoying, but it's just band-aids, right? It's just band-aids that don't help.
No, it doesn't help. But when you get like enough of us together who do understand it, it's comforting to not be alone.
Yes.
It's comforting. It's not, understanding it is beneficial, but it isn't comforting.
Not
Finding
at all.
other people who also understand is comforting. Right?
I think that's gaining momentum, which is almost imperceptible, right? I mean, how do you judge how much momentum it's gaining? But by you recognize the reflection of it in the general social circumstance.
Well, that's the thing is, you guys, I hear this from you all the time. You see it, I just don't get it. Well, I don't see it at all. I mean, I have no.
But it's like the manosphere is reflecting it in some
Yes.
fashion. That's odd. That's kind of peculiar because it's coming from a different direction and
It's bottom up.
unexpected. But it's operationally, they understand what's going on from their synthesis of it is not, it's not as parsimonious as yours is, right?
Right. Well, I mean, well, it's because they have that's not my intent is different, right? I want to fix the law and they want to change people's minds. Right. And so, and Martin has made this point a number of times. That's, they're not trying to solve the same problem. But if you look at what's happening to the manosphere, it's a statement about the disintegration of the family and intersexual relations, right? And if you look at the married folk, they're complaining about education and indoctrination of their children.
Right.
Right. And so these are both bottom up effects.
Yes.
And while it's easy to demonize business people who object to taxes, right, it's pretty hard to demonize moms and dads.
I can't. You can do it, but it really looks demonic when you do that.
And if you tell, I mean, it's one thing to say to a mother or father, if your kid is gay or whatever, we don't want your kid to be persecuted.
Right.
That's a different from saying we want to maximize the number of developmental failures, right? Which, because we're all developmentally fragile during our development.
Yes.
Right. And so, what they're saying is we want to maximize developmental failures, because we want to have a larger number of us who are activists because of developmental failures. And so the difference is when you're a parent, you're like, well, it's one thing to say, I don't want my children to be harmed for a developmental failure, but I don't want my child to be encouraged to be a developmental failure.
Right. Promotion of developmental failure is problematic.
And so they're trying to accelerate developmental failure by claiming it's innate rather than that development is fragile for everyone. Some people's development fails either in utero or immediately thereafter or during early stages. I mean, pedophilia is a developmental failure. The difference is it's harmful and it's incurable. Homosexuality may be incurable, but it may be a developmental failure, but but it's not necessarily, it's not beneficial, but it's not necessarily harmful, right? In other words,
I would say that it intrinsically is not harmful, but it can generate social signals, which maybe.
well, that's that, if people, this is true. If they can, if everything like that was everything that was contrary to the optimum development of children into families, right? Stable families. If everything other than this kind of was not in the commons, nobody would object. Nobody gives a shit what you do at home. But the problem, the commons is the place where we raise humans. Like
Right, so I got in trouble for this in med school.
Oh,
There
great.
was this is funny, man. So I was trying to print some stuff on the common printers in the study hall, right? And what happened was the printers were jammed up with pornography. They were just printing pornography, and I'm like,
Start this again.
I was working in a study hall. I would work routinely in the mornings, and I was trying to print some stuff on the printers in the study hall in the common area of the medical school. And the printers were jammed with pornography, and I complained about it. I'm like, this is just not acceptable. And it's like this. It's like somebody I was talking to a couple guys in the study hall one morning, and they started bitching about someone who was bitching about the pornography. Some prude, and I'm like, that prude would be me. And I said, that's why God made home computers. I don't want to hear about it in the professional environment, my brother. Silliness. Sorry. That was a
Well, I mean,
it's all it is. It's like nobody cares what you do at home. Don't do it in the comments. It's okay.
well, but when you say it as I don't like it, that's different from when it increases the chances that children will experience developmental failure on their way to responsible intergenerational adults. And they're like, well, and their assumption is that everything will be fine, which is like what women always do, is that they think the world will be fine, but the world is fine because men make it fine. Right? Where we need men to make the world fine so you can live under the delusion that the world is fine.
Which is buy another cat, get a new boyfriend,
yeah,
move on. Right? At the I won't say anymore. It's rude. I'm like, apologize for being more rude than necessary. I try to limit it. My mother taught me to be like that. It's all good, Kurt.
I like to tease people. I don't know. It's just so fun. I was on this subject, just going around the table teasing people about this shit yesterday. And some people they just don't have, they're really boring. So you can't get anything. They're so boring. They lead boring lives. They do boring things. But out of every group, there's usually a couple that you can put a quarter in, right? And people like to talk about themselves.
Right.
So what you do is you bait people into talking about themselves, right? And I just keep the conversation going, right? Right. Just find somebody to talk about, and usually there's a couple of guys, couple of girls, they want to get on this. So you just bait them into it and manage the conversation, and it's just fun. But this whole it was so obvious going around the table that all of this social catastrophe that's been brought about by undermining our institutions of cultural production, right? Which means our institution of intergenerational production of humans. Right?
Yes.
The difference between when you say it those two ways, right? It's the intergenerational, it's the destruction of our institutions of cultural production. Well, that's just an opinion. It's our intergeneration. It's our destruction of institutions that produce intergenerational transfer of responsible, high trust, truth-telling people who are able to maintain a democratic polity, right? That's two different things. So I'm like, well, this sounds philosophical and arbitrary,
right.
But it's engineering, right? It's engineering, and this is the product you're trying to engineer, because this whole thing doesn't work unless the circle perpetuates.
I understand that, and it's what's interesting. So it's like this comes down to my patient who told me that, well, everybody's entitled to their opinion, and I'm like, I know it sounded like my opinion to you. It's just funny because it's projection, right? Because we don't agree and I can't be wrong.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's the difference. An opinion is a value judgment on one hand, or a theory on the other.
Want, right.
Well, you're right. Value want. So comment do, or so versus then there's a theory. And so the problem is you're saying that you have a theory and I have a theory. Are you confusing the theory with the preference? Because that's what you're doing, is you're confusing the theory with the preference. So you're saying your opinion, which is a preference, is equal to a theory. Well, a theory is consistent and correspondent. You're fucking
And testable.
Well, yeah.
And
So
testable.
I mean, the answer is no. I mean, there's two things going on here. This is how you kill them with this. It's like, I'm not describing a theory. I'm describing I'm giving a description of what exists. And B, you're lying.
Oh my.
And you're lying by claiming that your value judgment is a theory. And it's like, well, of course, they have to be smart enough to understand what you just said there, which
Right.
which is
That just eliminated a lot of the conversations.
we're forgetting. It's like come back and says, Kurt, well, take your own advice. They don't think, they just feel, and they discover words for advertising their feelings. That's all they do. They're not actually arguing. That's why there's no logical consistency. They're just trying to find words.
They're wayfinding.
Well, but they're not getting anywhere. They're just trying that what they're doing is they're blocking snowballs with a shovel, with whatever shovel they can find, and they collect shovels of words. So they come up with all these internally consistent things that just throw up to block the snowballs of reason. And you're just like, there's no consistency to anything you say. What there is, the consistency is they've just collected an inventory of verbal nonsense that allows them to preserve their emotional state.
Right. That's interesting. It's like it's a reflex. So they're wayfinding to preserve their senses, their sensations, right? Their empathic state, right?
And part of that is what they're doing is they're this. So we all have an internal moral clock, right?
Yes.
Right, and which is
status indicator.
Right. I mean, it's exactly status indicator, right? And so that becomes our moral intuition. And so we have a personal, an interpersonal, and a political intuition across the spectrum. And so what happens is that they're trying to keep from having to adapt that.
It costs a lot.
Right, because it's costly. Because then I got to self-regulate all my impulses and emotions and judge them. And that's very hard to do because I rely on emotional intuition to make value judgments. And so what they're really doing is trying to preserve their intuition by putting obstacles in the way of reason that would force them to adapt by self-reflection. Basically, they're infants. The difference is an infant has this incentive to work with the world, right? But they don't. They have the existence to resist the world. And once you realize that's all it's going, they're just children. They're just children, and it's horrible.
It's not horrible. It's understandable, and it goes like
it's horrible if we let them vote, dude. It's horrible if we let them vote.
Well, that would be just an error, political error, right? Of grave magnitude, I might add, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, here's the question will be this: what type of poll testing service might you create in order to distinguish between those who cannot think and those who do think? How would you distinguish between them?
It's actually really easy.
See, this is what I mean. We're here for solutions, Kurt. How do you do this?
Well, I mean, you make a list of 1,000 questions. You randomly, which are like 5 or 6 categories. I can't do them off the top of my head because I haven't thought about this yet. But it's probably 5 or 6 categories, just like an IQ test. And you just ask random number of this 10,000 questions, and you find how long does it take you to tell? I mean, how long does it take you to tell?
When it comes down to this, it's like this. It's like when you fail the internal consistency and logic, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, not worth talking to. Dead
Yeah,
ball.
I don't even care if they fake it. Like if you can fake it enough to get by the
That's good
test,
enough. That's good enough.
that's fine.
You can send a fake vote too. It's okay.
Right? And that's okay, you
Because
know.
it's
But
hard to
if you
get
can't
that
even,
good.
if you don't even understand it well enough to fake it, you can't play this fucking
You can
political.
cheat. This test is cheatable, but you have some
Yeah.
noodles that function to do it, right? That's okay. I want to tie back what you said because this is interesting. There's intuitive functions which are personal, interpersonal, and political, which are like ethical status indicators. Is that fair? Like what did you call it? You said it was
I just call it the moral. It's just a population increase in the moral spectrum. So I had each of us generally has a moral demand for ourselves, right? What we feel is moral. Now, of course, I would use the systematizing view of moral, not my own judgment of moral. My own judgment of moral won't work. I know it won't because I'm too much of a fucking sap inside, right? I'm absolutely, my judgment is absolutely wrong politically, right? My internal clock. I mean, and you know me pretty well. I'm actually a sap, right? So I'm an asshole on the outside, but
it protects you.
it protects me,
It
right?
protects a nice Kurt.
so so you know, you have your personal, then you have your interpersonal, but that tends to be a reflection between yours and your responsibility for others. And then there's the political, which is a reflection of yours, your responsibility for others, and whatever crazy shit you have out there, right? And so most of it is just a projection of your own moral bias. But that's why we have to say, is your bias personal, interpersonal, or political?
Right. So it has to do with scale.
It has to do with scale, like everything, right? We always do the same thing. Create a series. You create a series, you'll figure out how the series is affected by variables, and you'll be able to create a system of measurement, which will tell you, that system of measurement will tell you the first principle, because that's the system of measurement. Once you understand the first principle, then you can say, okay, what's causality?
So we talked about this earlier. We were talking about the social relations that were occurring in the like social media, which is the top up or bottom up, the manosphere talking about relations, the parents talking about education, and the business people talking about business, and then the state being the ultimate endpoint of scale on that functionality. And we're operating in this. We're trying to fix the state. The parents are trying to fix education. The manosphere is trying to fix relations. But it has to do with this same moral spectrum and attuning the expectations and managing our external behaviors in order to achieve social ends at various scales.
Yep.
That's all it is. It's very interesting, boring. It's not kind of boring, but it's okay.
Well, it's just, you know, in the end, it's fucking obvious, right? I mean,
well, it's just work. It's like what, right? It's just work. It's like where are we working at? So we sort of must sort ourselves into where are we working? Like what scale are we working within? And then we organize ourselves to those people who are working within the same scale. So the manosphere guys kind of all accumulate together and they work within this scale. And then the parents work within this educational scale. And then the political state functionaries work within that scale.
correct.
And we align our interests with those who are lined up with us. Like I would say, I was talking about it. We were talking about this with relation to the metaphysical alignment. It's metaphysical alignment. How properly are you oriented to the truth, right? And then eccentric deviation from the truth is problematic because it's lies, and it causes the playing field to be tilted pandering to some and oppressing others by virtue of their ethical stance.
Yeah, I might sign, that's so close. I would have probably said the same thing. I want to test an idea on you. Is that all right?
Sure.
So you said on the truth, and I would say on the equilibrium between the masculine and female, feminine. So
Right. Proper equilibrium. Okay.
proper equilibrium. So you're trying to, what we're actually trying to do is maximize the number of trades that are productive and minimize the number of involuntary
Lies.
lies, right? And so when we say truth, well, the truth is a statement of what exists, right? Um, but all we're saying is the decidability is provided by survival evolution under condition of prosperity, right? And that we don't want to go backwards as every other group did. So when we say truth, the problem, you get, I'm like, well, it's true that we need to survive. Right? It's true that we need to continuously evolve. It's true that we need to continuously evolve by the increase in the rate of the transformation of captured energy. But we have to do that while maintaining the calculating power that's produced by the distribution between the male and female and the discovery of overlapping interests. Because the polarity of the male and female interest is a continually searching for new scopes of possible consumption or capitalization or consumption. And whenever we find an intersection when there's cooperation, we've satisfied both ends, maintaining the equilibrium that allows us to evolve. I don't want, like I said, the fundamental problem is that the Industrial Revolution enabled males to scale, and so our law kept pace somewhat with the ability of males to engage in irreciprocity. But we did that over 400 years, 500 years. In other words, males had 500 years of developing increases in scale. We've had 5,000 years of a civilization and fucking 50,000 years of normative development. And so we had a lot of time to work through the courts to develop male suppression of male antisocial behavior, right? And so, which is we think of as stuff that's got to be prohibited. The problem is we threw women into everything, like with a light switch instead of gradually by equal meritocracy. So what happened is we allowed the industrialization of the female strategy. And I don't mean it's just women; it's just the female strategies of undermining without equally suppressing them in modern law as we had in early common law. And so women don't want to be equally suppressed as our men. Whereas men are like, okay, if you're going to stop him from doing that, I'll stop doing it too, because I don't want to end this up in a fist fight. But women just blow it off as, well, that's male oppression. Well, no.
So I want to disambiguate this a little bit, because I want to push against the use of the word female and feminine. Say feminine, because it destigmatizes it. It destigmatizes it because anybody can use these tactics, and it's right. Like the fact is it's just a feminine mechanism for engaging in antisocial behavior.
It may have a female genetic origin, but we are all an admixture of male and females, producing a distribution of masculine versus feminine behaviors. So the behavior demonstrated is maximum right? And so I know you've taken on the mantle of trying to get me to correct this, and it's like I don't know what it is. I'm just having a hard time.
It just takes a minute, because it's just training your nervous system to stop making that attachment and make this attachment that's right next.
Well, because I always go to first principles, right?
Yes.
And in this case, I shouldn't. I should go to expression, right?
I understand.
In my sense, I mean the same thing, right? Because to me, it's like, well, it's the female origin. Well, I mean, yeah, but it's a feminine cognition, because feminine cognition,
the expression of that
thing. So I know why I do it. I just can't
Well, the other thing I'm working on is to cause you to making expletives on these podcasts. And I'm getting there. It's slow because you're internalizing. I recognize this. You're working. It's like working these pruning the neurons just a little bit. It's okay.
Brad's civil domestication of
It's
her.
just it's slow. It's a slow process. It's not pleasant. It's like the Germans in the East.
Anyway, so what were we fucking talking? We were talking about something intelligent there. Oh, feminine versus masculine.
Yes.
So we thank you. So I'll restate this. We have inserted through the addition of women. In other words, there's always a minority of feminine, cognitively feminine males, right?
That's right.
I mean, I don't mean they're gay. I mean they're cognitively feminine, right? Right? Because you can be your sexual bias, your cognitive bias can be independently variable too.
Right.
So you'd be a very rational gay man, right? You could be a very emotional gay man. You could be a very rational straight man. You could be a very emotional, intuitionistic straight man, right? Same fucking difference, right? So there's things overlap. The same thing is true for women. So the thing is, though, is that it's a 30% overlap. So you're saying, well, at most a third of the, it's really more like 20% of men are, cognitively feminine, right? And 20% of women is probably lower than that. 15% of women are cognitively masculine, almost rational. The truth is, even among sexual reversals, you can still tell that's a female brain under there and a male brain, right? You can still tell. I mean, it might take me a while, but I will make it possible to demonstrate that, okay, that's a male brain, right? So these things all vary, but in the end, you're right. It's just that the feminine cognitive and emotional bias was let loose primarily because we threw women in, which wouldn't have been bad, because the Christian female thing is care. It's not undermining. It's like redirection of resources, not undermining aristocracy. That would have been fine. But we brought in the Jewish post-war theorists and the Marxists, and their thing isn't care, it's undermining under pretense of care. And so they use the feminine method of argument. Well, you can let me finish my thing before you beat me up. All right. And so it's the combination of these two together, plus the fact that we didn't have what I've produced, which is the strict construction. We didn't have a logical law, so we couldn't look at our law and figure out what's wrong. And so between our being Christian for Christian males who don't want to be told we're immoral, right, and the success of the Jewish credentialists in producing the Marxist, neo-Marxist, postmodern, PC, woke wars against the our traditions, and the introduction of females into the economy and polity, but worse, into the majority customer base of the academy. We've produced the majority customer base of marketing and advertising in general. What's happened is that we've simply let loose the female cognitive bias without limiting our laws to prohibit the antisocial nature of women as thoroughly, I did it again. The antisocial feminine bias as much as we've limited the antisocial masculine bias. Underneath it, it's a really simple problem. It's just that when you're in the middle of the fucking maelstrom of chaos that's going on here, you're like, what the F is going on?
Kurt, that was well said. That was very well said. It was very well said.
What? I hear a but.
There's no but. No, there's no but. The only thing I would say is this. The issue is that undercover, and the cover was this, and it was the limitation of our articulatory capacity that has recently come to an end in the digital age, with the capacity for calculation with the use of the language.
Yes,
that's the difference. And it's like what occurred was they came undercover. They sounded so rational, and they lied like rugs and got their nose under the tent, and then they pandered to the feminine and promised them lies that can never be delivered. And that's all. That's how it works.
Yeah, my favorite one that's still out there is this presumption that Christians are anti-scientific because of evolution, without admitting that the liberals are anti-scientific on every aspect of human biodiversity. Right? I mean, it's like, okay, now there's no actual effect or impact of Christian fundamentalists believing that in the hand of God, right? I mean, it's kind of relevant.
They don't like the terminology is all it comes down to.
Exactly, right. So, right, that's really it, right? Because they have their thing, and I'm okay with that. I mean, I'm okay with it because I realize in the end it results in natural law. So I'm like, well, okay, so fine, right? I don't care. So,
Wait, it's not. It's a pass through. You get a pass on that one.
yeah,
Because it does only influence. It allows natural law to do its job.
yes, and so I'm like, okay, well, I don't really care as long as you get to that. And it does, and if you start saying that, well, we need to fund scientific research into the hand of God, I'm like, well, I'm not gonna. That's a different issue, right? But if you just want that, if it's just what we say it is, yet they deny sex, class, race, IQ, personality. They deny all these differences. It's the blank slate, tabula rasa, that we're unique among all life, and that we have no intrinsic.
Yeah, it's magic.
I mean,
wait. It's like it's truly the astounding function of it is it's like it is released from natural world altogether. Is the magic claim that human beings are created in the manner of the human beings created themselves out of nothing.
Yes.
It's just magical nonsense.
So I mean, why do they keep saying this? That it's the conservatives are anti-science. I mean, I know. My problem. Here's why. Why they say it is because we don't like the vaccine. Well, it's because you're stating a confidence that you can't have, right? And so whether we're stating the issue on global warming, because you're stating a confidence you can't have, right? And you're imposing a cost on me when it's my choice, right? If you leave it to our choice, then empirically it will result. So conservative basically means empiricist, whereas liberal means theoreticists, right? And that's what it means. It means utopian, hypothetical, theoretical versus conservative, not utopian, but optimum, empirical. And the same thing with I'm on this rant lately of concurrent common natural law, right? It's like, it's just empirical. It says we agree. So we've all reached a point of consensus where this thing can be recorded as settled law.
Mm-hmm.
The basic problem in our constitutional legislation is we haven't disambiguated what consists of common discovered law and what consists of concurrent legislation, right?
Yeah.
And that even among concurrent legislation, we haven't disambiguated between natural law and arbitrary preference. In other words, what's decidable under law and what's undecidable, which is decided by preference. Well, if we can legislate a preference,
right,
you can't legislate a truth. You can discover so it's just conservative is just empirical. It's just that how do we talk about empirical? The problem is we talk about empirical in moral terms because we've evolved it as our moral code, not as, in other words, we've evolved it through habit and tradition. Empiricism is so old, we don't have to invent a new name for it. It's just what we do. Does that make sense? You get what I'm saying?
It's understandable why they wish to destroy it as well, then.
Correct. Because they want to be in a world of projection and social construction that lives on the emotions, the ability to move the herd by emotional means. I mean, I keep arguing this is like, you don't get it. We're two different species. And this is an opportunity to speciate. I don't want those liberals with us. I want to separate. Guy says to me, well, they won't let us separate. I'm like, that's okay that they say they don't want to separate. They say they want to conquer us. They just gave us permission to do to get rid of them. Right. So, but put the choice out there. And so, but I mean, we've been empirical. That's the trick, is that why did we invent law? Why did we invent natural? Why did we invent empiricism and science? It's because we've been doing the shit by tradition for 5,000 years. Why? Because what does empiricism mean? It means testimony. And what is the testimony that is the most liable? Military.
Oh,
We start out with military testimony. We devolve it into contract. We build a whole civilization on testimony and contract, and we end up with what we call democracy, but which is really commonality in the negativa and concurrency in the positiva, because you can't see everybody's sovereign, because that's what it means.
It's hard to keep up with you, Kurt.
Well, I mean, it's like we said, though. I mean, what I do and what we do is we paint this fucking picture from 1,000 different directions, right? So that people can see underneath it.
That's right.
It's a very simple thing.
It's boringly simple, guys.
It's boringly simple. We got it right. We got it right by accident, and great. Well, we got it right by accident. We dragged humanity kicking and screaming out of catastrophe. Now, thankfully, the Natufians figured out how to plant grain, right? Which probably bothers the Middle Eastern. The Natufians I think they're Y chromosome Africans.
Okay. The Middle Easterners don't like that.
I guess they don't like that. Well, I mean, I don't know why. We call them Afro-Asiatics because the Middle Easterners are a mixture of Africans and Asiatics. The difference, of course, is that over time, the Iranic bloodline, the Persian bloodline, which is really the majority Middle East, right? Not the intermixed part, that just dominated. But anyway, like we keep saying, it's actually really simple underneath all this. But how do we teach people a simplicity when it's like, here's the great example. We taught people science. Science is a small number of general rules of universal application.
Yeah.
We got like a standard deviation of IQ out of that change, right? I mean, the equivalent. Are people really smarter? Well, their neural networks are now formed more optimally. But is their neural network any superior? No, it's the same biochemistry.
That's right.
Well, it's the same thing what we're saying here. We're saying you have all this ideas, these loose ideas about this man and society and politics and economics and all that stuff. But they're loose ideas the way man's understanding of nature was a bunch of loose idea on inconsistent ideas.
Right.
Right. And so we just made all of behavioral science, actually all of logical science as well, as consistent and coherent as we made the physical sciences.
That's all.
And we're going to, and Brandon's been saying this for a while.
What's that?
That you're going to see a 15 input IQ leap in mankind the same way we saw a 15 IQ leap in mankind. Does it mean that the neuroplasticity of people is improved? No, it just means the neurons are trained to have higher correspondence with the world.
That's easily believable because you took a bunch of noise out of the system.
Right. It's simple, right?
That's all it is. Because now it's like this. Because now it's like this. So I was thinking about this when I was reflecting as you were going. I was having auto associations. Of course, that's what I do as a human being. And I have to say that so that I can say anything I want.
Yeah, exactly. It's fucking brilliant. That was brilliant. I was like, wow, that was pretty good.
It goes like this. So Kurt was talking about this guy. So I'm checking out this Natufian thing. It's kind of cool. And I'm like, these guys invented this, and then they invented a new technology. They invented astrology, right? And it's like that was an advance, and they were able to make associations that were closer to correspondent. And that technology allowed them to gain.
Yep.
And it's like this technology is the same thing. So it's like this. We have to go back to we're going back to the Christians now. It's like the Christians, we're going to retroactively declare Darwin to be the absolute proof that the church was right.
Yes.
It's just proof. And here we are. We can do the math on it and show you exactly why. And you'll understand it. And then we'll all be 15 points smarter. And it's like the faster you jump on board, the faster you can start processing at this higher rate. The noise in the system will drop away. And the noise in the system sounds like a baby screaming in the back room.
Yeah. So can I run with that again? Can I go back to-
Absolutely.
So why carry all these people who are biologically cognitively defective? In other words,
that's not the defect that makes them problematic, which is the defect is their absolute unwillingness to upgrade their software. Does that make sense?
Well, I'm trying to figure out if it's true.
Okay, doing math. These calculators.
So there's two different. Yes, it's. I was just finding like, is that possible to do? Yes, we showed people science. Science worked, right? Physical science. We can show behavioral, evolutionary, linguistic science, right? We've got because. I don't have to, we don't have to, we actually know evolutionary science, right? So we don't need to know that. So physical evolutionary, right? We need behavioral and logical, right? Right. And so we've got behavioral and logical side. So will people understand behavioral and logical? Absolutely, because it's just science. The thing is that once we know that, it doesn't tell us what we have to do. It tells us there are costs and benefits to what we choose to do. And that these costs and benefits are not arbitrary. They're just physical cost. I mean, they're costs of the physical world. So the issue is, if some group of people want to have a highly redistributist, centralized top and bottom culture, then sure, go have it. The problem is you're going to be poorer, but that's going to be the shit. What's going to happen is the people at the bottom can shift all their responsibility to the people at the top. And you know what? It's probably okay. Because the people at the top might like it, and the people at the bottom might like it. Now, and besides the fact that people at the bottom get to do what they do in the rest of the world, which is blame the top for everything, because the top is responsible, right? And so the top is like, well, we're fucking responsible and we live well because we're responsible, and you live shitly because you're not responsible, but that's the way you fucking want it. If you don't want it that way, go to the middle class society, us, who says you got to be responsible for fucking everything, right? And if you can demonstrate you can be responsible for fucking everything, you can stay. And if you can't, you got to go back there. Now, I don't really understand why this is such a problem. If we just help, what?
It's not a problem.
It's not a problem. Except that we bring all the people from irresponsible cultures into this one, and the ratio is getting to be out of hand.
Well, I'm objecting to that a little bit. We bring them as like they're being pumped in here by some human traffickers without regulation. I'd say is the how I judge it, but I'm judgmental.
And we need, and then you go your deal with the economists. Well, we need to maintain our population. No, we have, as far as I can tell, 100 to 110, somewhere around there, maybe a little higher, surplus people in America. We have too many people out of our 340, whatever. We've got around a third of them that we don't need, right? That are because and what we need is what the Japanese are doing, which is automation. Because if you automate, you take all the people at the bottom out of the equation, and everybody that's left that would be in the bottom becomes a service person, right? But the service person, the multiples on return and service are low. Like your service worker is not productive in the sense of guy who manufactures cars, right? is multiples. There's multiples on a return on his investment. Well, there's no multiple return on delivering me your hamburger, right? It's a very low. So what we want to do is we want to automate as much as possible and move as the rest of the people into this, and then take the proceeds from automation and redistribute them to the people who are providing the services, right? Because the people at the top are already getting the rewards from the people who deliver the service. And it's just like, well, why do you think this we're clearly at the end of endless growth?
Yes.
Right. I mean, the growth. We're clearly end of the American ability to gain about 40% increase in quality of life by being a hegemon. So, I mean, if we're at the end of both of those things, and why are we adding people to the population under the premise that we can continue endless growth? We can't. There's just no way. There's no evidence. We haven't been growing since the 70s. Yeah.
It was they're importing more people to control you, sir.
Yeah, I know that. I know the answer.
Well, I had to say it for the audience.
Okay. Well, the answer is, of course, they're lying, right? They're lying.
Right. It's just a lie to justify the usurpation of power under the guise of democracy.
Right. All right. Can I pause? Can we pause while I get another cup of coffee?
Oh, I insist.
Just look, I have nothing.
Oh, no.
Oh, look how dirty my cup is inside. I
Oh,
clean the
my.
outside. I clean the outside.
Good job. All right. We resume after Kurt has coffee. Mine is still brewing, but Kurt is about to tell us a story about modeling for business.
So I have this spreadsheet, and I think I've had it since like Excel was invented. Like I keep upgrading it. And I use it to model a business I'm going to acquire or start. And I just fuss over it. Like, I'll spend a month coming back to, it's like, what about this? What about this? And I'll have it down to where I actually put fake names of people that need to be hired at what point of time, and, when we're going to have to get this next round of financing and how much cash flow we're going to need. So I need to get another loan and need to start it here. And, because there's normal stuff when you're growing a business that you got to carry. And what prices we can sell at, and what are the, and I just model this freaking thing until it's in my head. But in general, it just comes down to a set of, what you're trying to do is develop a set of intuitions. And it's one of those things like, I don't know why this isn't like how we do everything. I mean, because it's sort of like writing so I do the same thing if I'm going to write a project plan. I just write down everything I can think of, to the point where the project manager and the developers and whatever, they think I'm fucking crazy because I've put I've had like 1,500 line items.
Right. But
it's just so I can think through the whole thing.
So it's like this. It's like, so Kurt has created an external version of his forebrain. This allows other people to participate in the operation of that forebrain, which is quite nice.
Well, what you do is, though Sam Hughes would come back and tease me all the time, is, yeah, but your estimates are always half what they need to be. I'm like, well, that's your job. My job is to think through approximately what is this going to take, and then he says, yeah, but you never like my estimates. I'm like, because you always overestimate, right? And so we play these. I'm saying this because you might see this, and I'm a fan of Sam, so we worked together for a very long time. I think I don't know if he used to be at Bing. I don't know where he is now. But anyway, you put these things together, and that's what it is. But so if you look at a project plan, right, that's a deliverable, right? And you make a project for almost anything. And then you have a business plan, which is this model I've got, business model. And you realize that everything in your business is just a project. It's just the act of research, doing the analysis to break down your business. So if I want to buy a company, I can usually, in 15 minutes, ask enough questions to be able to deduce everything about the company. Right? Because things are deterministic. And so after a while, well, this kind of business generally has going to have a 14% of this and a 22% of that and a 30% of that and a 8% of that and a 4% of that. But you just know, right? And then so you ask general questions, you're like, I see what's wrong. And so then you know, okay, I can buy this company. Right. But you got to go do the work of figuring out how that's coming to be in their organization. And most of it's dumb relationship shit, right? I mean, it's just.
So I have to go. We're going to work off this because I'm working on this planetary model for morality. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So
wait, can I just before you take
I'm
me?
so sorry. Of course.
So the thing is, if you have a model of the business, right, and you have a model of the major departments as projects, and then you have a model of your initiatives as projects, what basically happens is you develop this intuition about any given business, and that's because you actually know. So you go take that to Greenspan. Now Greenspan's primary error was that he actually believed this reinsurance scam would work, which is a mathiness problem, right? Right. So he believed that he actually believed the stupid thing. I couldn't believe it because I know how this guy works, and he works the same way I do. Like, so the reason he understands economies is he went and did what I just described to the cotton industry.
Okay.
And he went right down to the knit.
Okay.
That doesn't mean he said, okay, businesses really work like this. He didn't pick something fun like Facebook, which is an outlier, right? He picked like the cotton industry,
right,
which is it's like something that you invest in if you understand that it's never going to go out of business, right? I mean, it's just one of those things.
right.
So if you put a good management team in there, it's going to crank out profit, right? So, but the problem is that same guy is still suckered by mathiness. This whole belief of reinsurance, collateral, CDOs, right?
Right.
And so he still can be fooled by it. But I mean, if you get I feel like the problem is we don't do enough of that detail. One of the things I like about business school and law school classes is you argue business cases and lawsuits.
Okay.
You're not arguing hypotheticals.
Ideals, right? It's not ideal. Right.
All right. I forgot where I was going to go with that. So now I've only stopped.
You interrupted yourself.
I distracted myself.
It's auto self-limiting problem. It's fine. So
I'm trying to figure out if it's getting worse as I'm getting older, and I can't tell. Probably.
We'll start making external observations for you, Kurt. We're going to help you. So this is it. So the issue is this is like the world is constructed in a fashion that it operates on an axis, which we would call it's performatively the normal axis to that world allows for the evolution of all forms.
I know what you intend to mean. I don't know if that's understandable what you just said.
It's like the issue is that I'm trying to be able to formulate it in an appropriate fashion, which is it's metaphysical in its understanding, which is there's a proper metaphysical alignment which is normal to the organization of the material world.
There are a set of assumptions about the universe that are consistent and correspondent at all scales.
There you go, and that allow for maximized evolutionary velocity.
That minimize the frictions of continuous recursive evolution.
There you go. Thank you, Kurt. Your sciencing me is helpful. And it's like this. So
that's because you actually make sense.
Thank you.
Sciencing people who make sense isn't hard.
Okay, so the issue is this: there's obliquity in social construction, which is related to the preferences being chosen over correspondence, which is deviation from that normal function.
So the deviation from the optimum means of continuous recursive evolutionary in a continuous state of prosperity. In other words, the maximum rate of evolution maximizes the adaptive stress of individuals and the systems of cooperation. Whereas the feminine intuition, the opposite intuition, is to minimize the adaptive stress of continuous adaptation.
Right. It's a perfect.
And they do that by deviation, and deviation from by false projection of the universe.
Right. And
So
so
you just made me understand. It's anthropomorphization. They're actually blaming. Oh,
they're projecting on the universe their flaws.
Well, I mean, but they're also treating the universe as if it's a person.
And they are. It's projections. So the issue is this.
Oh my God, that's so depressing.
I'm sorry. What's funny is that makes you laugh.
It's because it's human absurdity makes me laugh.
But it's like so they're anthropomorphizing the material world. At the same time, they besmirch people who talk about God.
Well, I mean, that's only because the God that we're talking about demands responsibility.
He's like a dad. Anyway, so the deviation from the normal is obliquity in orbital mechanics, orbital geometries. We understand it as obliquity. It's the deviation of the tilt from normal to the orbit.
I don't know what. Okay, so is that their attempt through anthropomorphization to treat the universe as if it can be manipulated by human emotions, and then therefore to treat the dominant caste, which is males, as oppressors, when those dominant males are reflecting the laws of the universe, results in I'm trying to figure if you mean is there a measurable variation from the optimum, and there's never. And the optimum, I'm always saying, isn't an ideal. It's like there's an ideal, there's what we can get to through cooperation.
Yes.
Right. And then there's like all the stupid shit we wish it was. Right. And then that's where they are.
That was the most rude, of course.
Well, I mean, hopefully I'll.
But it's measurable.
Either Martin will capture, somebody will capture what I just said there.
Right.
Because that's actually pretty explanatory.
It will help. But it goes to this, which is obliquity is the proper term. And I'm going to read the definition of it that comes up when I searched it. Wordnik. 1, the quality or condition of being oblique, especially in deviating from a vertical or horizontal line, plane, position, or direction. 2, the angle or extent of such a deviation. And 3rd, the deviation from moral or proper conduct or thought.
Oh, I didn't know about the last one.
I know, but they are naturally, intentionally oblique and maximizing their obliquity.
They're attempting to generate demand for satisfaction of their demand from others for satisfaction of their demands, but that by demanding something different from what is being produced by the optimum or the optimum meaning possible, and the theoretical maximum. Yes. Okay.
The interesting function of it to me is this: the axis of in orbital mechanics, though the orbital plane is representative in my mind of the material world that we exist in, and the normal to it is the axis that allows us to evolve most rapidly. Normal being perpendicular to that plane of rotation or orbit.
But why do you feel the need to use this metaphor?
because it's normal, and it's deviation from normal that costs. It is geometrically representative of the problem at hand.
You want a symbol, a
Yeah,
visual.
it allows for quick, intuitive understanding of what is occurring here, and it's verbally consistent.
All right, I'll go with it. This is your kind of thing.
Yes, sir. And it doesn't contain any alchemical symbols whatsoever. Just that was a tip.
I'm kind of related to if we can represent it on the triangle.
It's a theta. It is actually, it's representative. We talk about this in geometry already.
I mean, the triangle
Yes.
is
So it's like this. It's
is a meter.
If you do that with the triangle, so the triangle, there's a moral axis, which is optimum and negative optimum. And then it's the social construction is twisting it. There's a twist. The social construction is twisted at the bottom to deviate it when you look at the orbit of, say, the Earth, it's at 23 degrees and change. It causes the tropics, okay? And this tropism it causes deviation or preference or bias to be exhibited around the equator based on the orbit during the course of the year. And this is the same as the bias of preference and anti-preference being demonstrated in the obliquity of the social construction.
Okay, so you really like pictures.
Human beings operate from pictures. They like them. It makes quick sense.
Okay, I can go with that. I think I can do it because it's pretty easy to show the diamond, the triangle,
Right?
and meter where the distortion is, where the distortion at the bottom is trying to cause a distortion.
What they're doing is trying to prefer somebody that didn't earn it at the expense of someone who did.
Okay, so now if I have children, they can't earn it, right?
No, you're paying forward, right? You're paying forward because you were taken care of when you were a kid, and you're trying to make it good on your intergenerational promise that your parents made to you and you made with them before you were even.
But that's a moral promise.
That's correct.
The practical necessity is you need people to take care of you when you're older.
That's right.
Right. I mean, it works both directions. The debt is the debt is transferable, but it's also transferable intergenerationally. So I mean, it's just pragmatic.
That's right.
It's just even if it isn't moral, it's pragmatic.
I'm sorry, I caused you to deviate from your thinking.
Well, I'm trying to. So I always go to my way, which is I write it algorithmically because that's what I do.
Oh,
right?
okay.
We started the triangles because we found out much easier for people to understand. I mean, I produced the one major triangle, which is the class,
Yes.
the class and influence and coercion thing, and then everything fell out of that. I mean, that
Yes.
was a long time ago. And so there was a lot of value in it, but everything else I do is in tables.
Yes.
Right. And so
Yes.
I'm highly textually biased because I want to eliminate every possibility of errors in induction,
Yes.
deduction, abduction. And so I use tables because they create measurements that can't be misinterpreted. My problem with diagrams or visuals is
Yes.
usually they are an analogy, and therefore deductions, inductions, and abductions from the analogy will be false. And so that's why I try to do it. However, if you provide the illustration as a key, the measurements, the tables as a measurement,
Yes.
and the narration as an explanation, you're probably satisfying every dimension by which people can grasp concepts. So that's why I keep saying, okay, well, if I can make a visual key here, then that's fine. It's just that everything ends up being somehow one of the triangles.
Everything ends up
It has to be.
yes.
So when you hear me questioning you,
I don't take it any offense by any means.
well, that's all I'm doing is saying, is this going to lead to people making deductions that are, because I have enough problem without the triangles already.
I do. I think if you tie it to the charts, the charts which contain the verbiage,
The tables, basically. Yeah.
tables. I'm sorry, get the right terminology. And but when you put the two together, then it gives you measurements about which to talk about these things.
Yep.
And then it's geometry. It's just geometry and metrics. And now it's just a social geometry. And just like I say, it's just crystallography. It's very simple. It's beautiful. Anyway, that's all. That's all on that. It's obliquity.
It's just funny to me that that the variation from the norm is ended up in what's a mathematical term. I love that. Do I love that?
So my uncle, I'm going to tell a story on my dear uncle, who was a good lefty, Harvard trained doctor. And he said this one time, we were chatting, we were talking about politics, and he goes, not everything is rational, Brad. Say starvation is not rational. And I said, starvation is entirely rational. You don't get enough rations, you starve. And he goes, that's an accident of the language. I go, I don't believe in such accidents. That's silly talk. It's a coincidental theorization.
That's a formula. That's just a formula. If you don't get enough calories, you starve. That's a descriptive formula. When he says language, the way he means it, he means a story, not a description. All right. So there's a difference between a story and a description. All right. And so
yeah, he didn't see me do math. I was just doing math.
Yes.
But I didn't recognize it at the time, right? That was interesting. And now Kurt explains to why that joke was so funny to me, because it was funny to me.
It was funny.
But it's like that's even more rude, because like, okay, we talk about this work as shit. I don't remember the terminology I generated, but it's like it's the joke. Okay, so it's the joke of the ancient astronomer in Babylon pulling the wool over the eyes of the heathens who don't know that the moon's going to have an equinox or whatever. We're going to have a eclipse of the moon or the sun, and it's like, watch me get all the virgins in town this week, man. Watch it. It's a joke on everybody that's not in the know. It's that kind of a joke, right? Isn't it? Is it because it's like they're innumerates or illiterates, and it's like, watch this. It's like they can't. The Roman guy running down the road, he's like, I know exactly how far it is. The barbarians are dead meat because we're going to arrive with 4 extra legions that they're not expecting.
Yes.
And we know it. And it's just a joke on them. And that's too bad, because they should have learned how to read and write. But I got to read.
There's so many places to go with that.
Right? That's all that's happening here is.
Well, yeah, of course, I want to go to who tried to pull the wool over people's eyes and who didn't.
Okay.
And, that's what bothers me. We're so celebratory of this beginning of religion and our emphasis on religion, but that's the origin of pulling wool over people's eyes. It's
Right.
claimed
Well, it was a credentialism, right?
Right.
Because I'm going to do something that will demonstrate my superior knowledge, and that will cause you to grant excess credence to me forever, because you can't even know how I figured it out, and it was just predictable to me. But I gained credibility beyond reason by demonstration of my superior knowledge, right?
Mhm.
That's
Well,
it.
it's,
So it
it's
is
just, and
correct.
the other thing is that the ability to justify whatever outcome based on the imprecision of the original claim. It's like reading entrails. That one that is the funniest. I don't know why I think that's so funny.
I wanted to talk about that. That's very interesting. What do you think of it? Reading entrails, which the Romans would do it because it's like this. You get the rabbits in the local area you're thinking about building a city in, and you make sure they're healthy. Because if they're not healthy, we might not want to make our city here. That's why we read the entrails, because it's stupid not to. It's a form of engineering, because how I need to make sure I don't put my city in a bad place.
Yeah, I just don't know if that's. I mean, I don't know if that's a post hoc
Oh, interpretation.
interpretation or not.
I understand.
Because what happens when you catch a thing and you clean it, you open it up.
Yes.
That's when you find surprises, like infections, or we had a freshly caught tuna yesterday. It was like
Wow.
200, and it was enormous. I
Wow.
caught it the day before. Cooked it on the
That is
grill. Oh my
that
God,
is
it was
freaking
so good.
crazy. That's
So
just
good.
crazy.
He's going out today. He says, I'm gonna catch two today.
Wow.
And,
Wow.
and they're huge. I mean, they're bigger than him.
Yeah.
Um anyway, so what are we doing? How did we were talking about something. I lost it.
Okay. I can try to walk it back. You talk about religion and credibility and taking advantage of people's credulity. Right.
Right. So, when you cut open it, you can find parasites and whatever. And that's a revealed truth. So I get the origin of the problem. And the reason I'm thinking of that is that I know another guy was talking recently about fishing, and he saw something that didn't look right on the outside of the fish. He's like, oh, I'm not eating this fucking thing. Goes back. So I think there's sort of this opening of mystery aspect that is so universal and so widely experienced that people can say that there's more there than there is. That makes sense to me. This is like the planets. I mean, the planets and the stars. I mean, there's a pattern there, but it's a very difficult pattern to identify. And so if people start identifying that such they can predict seasons, that's pretty fucking impressive.
Oh yeah.
So I get that. And not only that, is if you can predict harvest and planting and whatever the seasons, then it's really meaningful to your life. Right? You might get a warm spell, but the guy's saying it's not time yet. Our crops will die because it still could get cold. Or the opposite. It says it's planting time, but it's still too cold, right? I mean, it's not warm enough. So you have this wonderful, valuable thing. So there are reasons why people would say, shit, that's amazing. The other problem is that suggestion fucking works. I mean, it's just like wave your hands over somebody and they do. The endorphins make them feel better, right? I mean, the real answer is they're getting attention. When we're getting attention, we feel better, right?
Right.
And so, get attention, we get care, we get whatever. And so
Right.
You get some endorphin responses. So, I mean, God knows, right? I mean, so there's reasons to understand that people would know more than you, right? I mean, right? And there's reasons to believe that if I could open up and read these entrails, if I can find parasites in there, I might be able to find other things. Because there's always we're sort of in this world now, we don't have this sense the ancient peoples had of our ignorance. In other words, there's this vastness out there. Like we think about the universe now. Like we just can't fucking get there, but I mean it's just another planet with a guess, right? But that's really weird. For most people, it's like, what's in my direct experience? I can't read, right? I can only tell stories. And so there's this vast, unknown, infinite nothing out there that's full of God knows what, right? And so it's really understandable how people would, if
Oh,
you
right,
were,
right. Don't you just imagine the like is the depths of the seas, right?
yes,
What you just when you don't have a boat, you're just
yes.
like, that's a scary place. It's just full of water and there's stuff inside there that swims around like who knows how big.
Then you get the fishtails, right? People do,
Right.
but I mean, it's like, and how could they conceive of the Marianas Trench? And it's just, you can't conceive of it, right? I mean, it's like, where did I move? I think it was when I moved to Seattle. I became conscious of the fucking volcano in the backyard because it's sitting there.
Looking at it
You,
every
you
day.
can't miss it. It's if you look at it from the north of Seattle south to the fucking volcano, it fills the goddamn sky, right? It's not like it's small; it's fucking enormous.
Unavoidable.
And you think about how would that affect me if I had no idea? That's power.
Yeah.
Right, that power. So there's a lot of these primitive. If you study these ancient religions, even a little bit, I'm really not into this stuff, but I've had to learn enough of it to be able to understand origins, and you begin to see why people saw all this mystery in the world, and that they didn't have the confidence to say, "Oh, that's bullshit," because things outside there
There's enough outside my experience that I'm
experience,
willing to have to say that
right?
that's probably within the error margins of my
And
cognition,
it's believable.
right?
Right, right. I'm trying. What are the fucking Pacific when that goddamn tidal wave hit
Oh
the
my.
Pacific Northwest? I'm sure those American Indians got an inspiration.
It's
That was a
memorable,
god. That was a god shaking. God had to do that because
right?
there's no other explanation.
Right.
I'm trying to think of what would happen when that piece of Norway fell in the water and the whole freaking Scotland and north of England got under 300 feet of water. That must have been fucking
Just
terrifying.
just for a minute or two. Just a splash. Wow.
The ones we're seeing lately, I mean, they don't look too. They're scary because they're bringing such a volume of water, but I haven't seen one that's 100 to 300 feet high yet, right? I mean, I just can't imagine seeing a wave 300 feet high coming.
I
I
don't
mean,
think it looks like a wave.
just like
It
some
looks like
wall.
if you see the movies from Japan of that recent thing,
Yeah,
that Fukushima thing, it was like this. It just kind of starts filling up the area and just keeps rising.
sort of like the horizon's moving,
Yeah, and then not in a good way.
not in a good
It's like
way.
we don't know how high it's going to go. Just keep
Something's
going
not
higher.
right here. Maybe we should run.
And like really, and this is the real sad thing is this. So the Fukushima thing really got on my nerves. See, as a native of Japan, which I get to say because I was born there.
Yep.
And it goes like this. At Fukushima, 600 years ago, somebody went to the trouble of bringing a chunk of granite and then carving on that piece of granite for the children, for the gods. He's trying to help the children. It says, do not build below this line, which is way on the hills above Fukushima, which got inundated by the wave. It's like, how come you did not honor your ancestors?
Yes.
I really find it to be offensive. You owed a debt to him and you had to pay the price for your ignorance. There you have it. Intergenerational debt. I'd like to tie that back to what we were talking about just moments ago.
Can I ask your opinion on something? Because I don't remember what
Of
you
course.
thought. The Georgia Standing Stones destruction.
Yes.
What was your opinion of that? Because it really bothered me. I have a problem with art.
I know we had this conversation a little bit, and it's like this. It was, to me, the destruction of it was, it was visualized by some as not art, but prescriptive.
Oh, I see.
So it's like that. It's damnation. You're calling for damnation of the people and not natural selection and not natural anything. You're trying to tell us how this is going to be. That's why it was destroyed.
It really bothers me because I'm like, it was a warning. It was probably
I
like, let them not breed in great numbers. Right? I mean, that's just like, okay, you know, there's a lot of stupid shit written on stones around the world. I mean, if you want to know what's really fucking hysterical, because I've told the story 100 times, go read what's written on the steles from Ur.
From where?
Ur, the cuneiform. It's fucking
Okay.
hysterical. I have a big dick. I kicked ass and won. You know, it's like that.
No, it's just that's different. See, that's not prescriptive. It's descriptive.
Well, you know, but whatever. I mean, it's just
Wait, but it's different function because it's like when you're suggesting this like this is it suggests mass murder to people.
see, that's not what it said. But I mean, okay. So here's the end. It's like it's this. If people go to the make a piece of art, and if it says you shall murder, right? Then I sort of get it. But even then, I actually prefer to have the discussion piece. Right? It's like I don't want to celebrate Stalin or Marx.
I know, but so let's just talk about that for a second. This is pretty good. So we have the discussion piece. But Kurt, before somebody blew it up, nobody was talking about it.
That's not true.
Well, you weren't.
I was. I talked about it for a long time.
I didn't ever hear you talk about it.
Well, I mean, I didn't talk about it to you, but it was like I thought of doing similar things. I did artwork like that.
Oh yeah.
I was myself. I did pieces. I made them out of styrofoam. I covered them with a plasticizer, and I carved the words in them. But it was, it was more. It was experimental, right? Can this be done? And so when somebody actually put those things up, I'm like, huh, that's interesting. I'm not sure I would have said that, but the idea of having multiple languages seemed like a really interesting thing. I didn't find anything they said really offensive. The whole thing is just keep the population down because the earth can't sustain it. Well, that doesn't mean go around killing people. It means,
well, that's a subject to the interpretation of the people who read it.
like the kind of person who would put that up wouldn't say go kill everybody. I mean, it's just
I just go like this. It's like I don't know. I'm not here to judge that. It's not judgeable. It's an undecidable function.
I mean, I kind of think of it said there. If I look at that thing and I'm like, if the guy the guy or guys wanted to say, you need to go kill a lot of people, it would have said that, right? But it's like all I saw was a statement about the carrying capacity of the planet, which we've been talking about fucking since since what's his name,
Malthus.
We'll be talking about this forever, and we're actually running up against the problem, right? And so I'm like, okay, I don't understand we could debate the number. It was a small number.
Half a million.
And the number's
500 million. 500 million.
Yeah, the number's probably closer to a billion or two, right? Right. A billion seems pretty easy sustainable. Certainly half a billion is easily sustainable, right, on the planet, right? So I just couldn't figure out why that was so offensive to anybody. I'm like, well, I mean, this is a statement of the carrying capacity of the planet. If you want to make something that's going to last for 5,000 years, making that statement before the catastrophe happens might have been educational to somebody. Right? I mean, it's like destroying the Buddhas. That really pissed me off. I mean, Muslims destroying the Buddhas. Jesus Christ, give me a break. I think the Buddhists, it's the least offensive religion. It is. It's seriously, it's the least offensive religion there is. I mean, it just tells you to fucking mind your own business. I mean, really, it's like mind your own business and be happy with it. So I mean, I don't get that. And then they're like they're destroying the temples. The Muslims are destroying temples. I'm like, that's not okay. Because we learn to reflect through these things. Of course, yeah, I've studied art, so of course this stuff is important to me. So maybe I have a higher appreciation for it than normal people would. But as a person who has that understanding, I'm like, I don't fucking get it. I mean, I don't want to I don't want to celebrate Marx and Stalin, but if I stuck the things in a museum rather than
Yeah,
put them in a museum rather than a town square,
right.
that's sensible to me. But
Right, so Seattle has a
I know.
Stalin, not Stalin. Yeah, Stalin. No, it's Lenin. It's Lenin.
Is it Lenin or is it Marx? I've been there because it's not.
Marx. I think it might be Marx.
I think it's Marx. I get a picture in front of it somewhere.
Huh.
We had a one of those puzzle games where where there's an online thing you look at and it gives you a clue where the next place is, and so you drive your car to the place.
All right.
Your team, you look at the little thing that's written on the stone, you put it into the website, and then you get the clue for the next place. Of course, we came in last. I got my Ferrari. We come in last, right? But one of the places was that. There's also a troll under a bridge. There's a stone troll. I don't know if it's
as opposed to a troll without a bridge.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Seattle was a good place before 2000. Before 2000, I think it was really the Amazon thing that fucked it up.
Well,
because Microsoft we could handle, but we couldn't handle that, and then all the other companies started relocating there so they could steal Microsoft employees.
Oh, okay.
And it just went down, and then the immigration made it worse. So, and Seattle's always been pretty Scandinavian, so they're pretty like the Scandinavians. They're pretty biased to the left. So they escaped the Civil War problem. They escaped the '60s problem, and they brought it to themselves. It's now they're just like Seattle's pretty much in the same place as San Francisco. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go off on a rant there.
This is mine a rant.
Hmm?
I'm stuck because I'm trying to figure out the name of the name I call your science. I have to find it. I'm a little bit irritated at myself for not having remembered it. That's okay. That's why I write notes, copious notes.
I've learned that by taking copious notes, it just means instead of forgetting them, they're lost in them. Right?
I know. I like watching the amount of writing you've done. I'm like, oh my God.
What's even scarier?
What's
the
that?
amount of text files I have on my hard drives that's not up there. And then it's like, because if I write something stupid that's ridiculous, I just stop, right? But I don't delete it.
I understand you.
I want to keep a record of my stupidity, right? I mean,
I'm like, it's useful. It's like a negative indicator of something.
I'm really confident about some idea. I figured it out. I start making the argument like, God, that was stupid. How the hell did I even think of that in the first place? I keep all those.
Oh my. And I have this just copious wads of just stuff too, but it's like, it doesn't hold a candle to your nonsense. I must say, it's impressive. So we got to just get done with this book. That's my game plan, is get done with this book so people can have something on their shelf that they can refer to that we find as a good final product.
Okay, so before, I don't remember when you left and when we had the last.
So about the 22nd is the 23rd was my last date. So
we had a staff meeting.
Yes.
And I got a lot done after that staff meeting.
Good.
So, I just need to focus. I'm just about okay enough to do this.
Good.
And so I look at it and I'm like, well, I can, it's here. It's not bad. I can do it. But the problem is I'm sit down and I'm still only good for an hour or two.
Okay.
I need to be good. I need to be good for 6 hours.
Okay.
But I've got it. And I think it's pretty tight, dude.
What's that?
It's pretty tight. I mean, what we've got here is pretty.
Yes. It's almost ready. I'm very excited about it. get it finished.
All right, so can I call it a day?
Yes, of course.
I really enjoyed our talk this morning.
I enjoyed it myself.
And so I'm going to see you. I'm not going to see you during the week this week.
I can do tomorrow.
You can?
Yeah.
I would like to do tomorrow then.
Let's do it then. We'll do it same time.
Yeah, and we'll see. Can we just see if we can finish off the last bit of lying and see if there's anything major that needs to be done there?
That'll be wonderful.
Because then if we're done with that, that's sort of it, right? Then we go back to just walking through basically we go back to, we're actually completing the book, right? We're going back to that. All right.
Perfect. Thanks, Kurt.
Love you, brother.
Hey, everybody. Hit that button, and that button, not
Like,
once.
subscribe,
And then leave
bell, and-
copious notes for this wonderful time we have together. It's so beautiful, Kurt. I'll look forward to sharing some coffee with you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.